Good afternoon. Welcome to Kent City Council Committee of the Whole for January 2026. First item, may we have a roll call, please? Kim?
Thank you. Council President Kaur.
Here.
Councilmember Boyce. Councilmember Boyd.
Here.
Councilmember Larmer.
Here.
Councilmember Michaud.
Here.
Councilmember Shoker.
Here.
Councilmember Troutner.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. And next up, we have agenda approval. Any changes to the agenda? If none, may I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, approval of minutes for January 6, 2026. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you so much. Next up, we have payment of bills, and we get those in our email. So may I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. All right, we have our next item for Economic and Community Development and a subject matter chair, Councilmember Larmer.
Thank you, Council President. So tonight we have Deja Mitchell is going to talk us through, it's information only item, but it's Recode Kent Phase 2 and 3 updates. Deja.
Hi, so I'm Deja Mitchell, Long Range Planner here, and I'm here to give updates on Recode Kent, in particular our Phase 2 and our Phase 3 updates. So as you all know, Recode Kent is a multi-phase project to update our housing code, our permitting processes, and our development standards to better align with state law, community goals, and our 2044 comprehensive plan. So just jumping into our agenda, so we'll first talk about what we adopted in Phase 1, what we adopted in part of our Phase 2, and what we intend to close out Phase 2 with, and then what we have intended for Phase 3. So Phase 3 was adopted, or Phase 1, sorry, not Phase 3. Phase 1 was adopted June 30th of last year, so 2025, under Ordinance 4517. And that adopted 8 different state regulations or state laws, most notably our middle housing regulation. So we did some zone consolidation, created new permitting processes, and a bunch of other things that you can see on the screen here. So we knew this was a big overhaul for not only ourselves, but also our community members. So we created resources to help them out. So we created a middle housing quick guide. And this quick guide essentially told the community members what middle housing was and how to go about building middle housing in the city of Kent. We also created an interactive mapping tool. So this interactive mapping tool showed our new zoning districts, our walk sheds around major transit so people know what their parking standards could be or how many attached units they could have. It also showed urban separators and utility service areas. So jumping into our Phase 2, so we recently adopted number 1 and 2 on this list here. So we adopted Ordinance 4529 November 18th of last year as well. So that was adopting communal living regulations in our Kent City Code, which updates our communal residences legislation in our Kent City Code. We also adopted Ordinance 4530, and that was an exemption on new infrastructure improvements for development that's 4 units or less and in zones NRL, NRS, and NR2. So those 2 were adopted last year, so those are completed. However, the bottom 3 are new, and we intend to close out Q1 with our final 3 for Phase 2. So we have strategies to balance out middle housing with historic preservation. We also intend to incorporate the Mill Creek Historic District regulations within the Kent City Code. We have some small updates, so general amendments to our design guidelines, and also updating our zones, CC and CCMU, so community commercial and community commercial mixed use, to provide more housing options and more home ownership options as well. So jumping into historic preservation, so we have State House Bill 1576, and that is a recent bill that was passed, and it essentially says that the city must adopt regulations that prohibit the designation of a property as a historic landmark outside of a designated historic district. and that is if that property is less than 40 years old, if it would restrict the use of the property, and if the property is less than 125 years old, and the property owner has not given written consent. So part of our ILA, which is our interlocal agreement with King County, we already do the top 2 bullets, so we'll be adopting language that says what's highlighted there on your screens or on the screen, essentially just saying if a property is 125 years old, you must have written consent for it to be a historic property if it's outside of a designated historic area. And I should note, this has to be adopted July 26th of this year, so we do intend to have this adopted relatively soon, so you should see this pretty soon. Next, we have our Mill Creek Historic District. So during phase 1, we had a lot of community concern regarding maintaining the character of this area in regards to the litany of housing regulation we adopted, and also just making sure the historic character of this area didn't change, or developers didn't feel they can come in and just kind of wipe everything from the board. So we didn't have time to do it in phase 1, so we said in phase 3, we will formally recognize our Mill Creek Historic District. And I should note, this district isn't new. It was approved as a landmark designation nomination in 2013, and then adopted by King County shortly after. So it is currently in our NR2 zone. So it's not new, it's been here for a while. Our code just didn't really have it recognized, but we've been abiding by King County's legislation regarding historic preservation. Draft code will explicitly provide language around the preservation of historic buildings and property within this area. Next, we have House Bill 1293. So this is state legislation that was adopted in 2023, and it essentially says that we must have clear and ascertainable design guidelines, and those guidelines should not reduce bulk, height, density, or scale than what is normally allowed in the applicable zone or the underlining zone. So we did most of this, or we completed a lot of design updates during our phase 1, making sure we had those clear and attainable guidelines for residential development 6 or fewer. However, in phase 3, which is where we're headed now, we intend to focus on larger scale development, and we reviewed our design guidelines, also sent out a survey with our developers, and developers didn't find any issue with it, neither did our consultants. So we intended to abide by legislation rather, intended to provide a disclaimer saying, you know, we don't intend to restrict height, bulk, and scale, and if that does happen, our planning director has the authority to waive or change things so that we're not restricting height, bulk, or scale per legislation. I will say eventually we would like to have consistency across all of our external design review documents, so we have about 5 or 6. So this is just a fix for now. We do intend to come back when we're reviewing starting our Benson corridor plan and provide some consistency across all of our documents and probably consolidate them as well. And lastly, for phase 2, we have updates to our community commercial and community commercial mixed use zones. So you can see here in the circled red, in the red here, is where we have a lot of our community commercial and community commercial mixed use zones. That also is where we have our Benson corridor, which is on 104th and 108th. So we're looking to increase homeownership opportunities in this area by addressing barriers that we have in KCC that limit the production of housing. So that could be something like lot coverage or ground floor requirements that just don't make it feasible to have housing or mixed use there. And we're doing this because in our comp plan, this area is designated as an activity center and includes a county designated growth center. Additionally, our comp plan has a vision for this area to be mixed use with a concentration of housing, economic development, transportation, and infrastructure investments. So we intend to make that vision happen, and this is just the first start of it. We do intend to come back when we do the Benson corridor plan also to fine-tune our changes that we're making here in phase 3 and do more holistic changes. We're also hoping to have this adopted pretty soon, maybe sometime in March, so also look out for that as well. And next, we have phase 3. So a lot of you all were here in our phase 3 kickoff, so this is our joint council and boards commission meeting that we had in October of last year. So this was the start of our engagement for Phase 3. It really helped to lay the groundwork for understanding what the community priorities were when it comes to site design with middle housing and how to develop site design when you have existing site challenges such as a tree or an existing home. So that leads me into what we actually have planned for the rest of Phase 3. So we have quite a list here, and we don't intend for this to be a quick turnaround. So this will be something that may take us a while. Definitely not as quick as the design district. But for Phase 3, we're looking to develop site design standards that work for middle housing and all the updates that we did in Phase 1. So that's inclusive of parking, access, landscaping, open space, things like that. We also intend to update our residential design standards for single-family and middle housing type. So we have some already that are adopted and that are in our code. They're legacy code, and then we have now a bunch of more or new housing types. So just updating those standards to really push forward our standards. Next, we're wanting to expand our unit-lot subdivisions. So during Phase 1, we did introduce unit-lot subdivision, and we capped it at 9. And just for reference, unit-lot subdivision is an option to create homeownership with middle housing. So it says you have the exterior of the lot, and as long as the exterior of the lot adheres to our development code, you can have little small lots in the inside. So you have one big parent lot with little small lots in the inside. So we're looking to expand that past 9 and possibly 10 plus. We've heard from our developers, and they're wanting to have more unit lot subdivisions, preferably past 9. We're also looking to possibly update our plan unit development standards. So they have some similarities between unit lot subdivision, and if we're going to change and update unit lot subdivision, we may need to look into updating our plan unit development standards, as they're for large properties that we don't really have anymore, and they're also a little outdated. So we may be updating that as well. And lastly, we'll have some director's interpretations. So we knew in Phase 1 that we would break the code, and we may have issues that we may not see, or we'll have other people telling us, hey, did you mean this? So this is really to fix those for the interim while we work on code amendments to codify these changes and what we really mean in Phase 1. My apologies. And that is all I have for you all. I should note that we've had 4 pre-apps for middle housing, so we're looking to keep up that momentum for middle housing this year. And I think RECO can really help us push forward with permits and applications and things of that nature.
Any questions? John?
Thank you, Deja, for the update. On the number 3, the expanded unit lot subdivision, could you explain that again?
Yeah. So imagine you have one big square, and that square has to adhere to our development regulations. So you have your setbacks, all those things like you would have a normal house. But inside of that square, you can have other unit lot subdivisions that don't necessarily have to abide by the development regulations. So as long as your parent lot, the biggest square you have, adheres to our development regulations, that's fine. But your unit lots can be broken up through the wall, or they can have, they can transition based on whatever you see fit, essentially. So anything that's grass or anything could be put in an HOA, but your main concern is having that parent lot in the middle home, or smaller homes in the inside, or smaller units in the inside.
Okay.
Looks like
Okay, thank you.
to say something.
I was just going to explain, it's a really wonky term, but it basically allows for individual ownership opportunities in middle housing as long as the lot itself complies with the setbacks. So the individual unit lots may have smaller setbacks.
Thank you. Okay. Michelle Sugar.
Thank you for the presentation. Just a quick question about the quick guide and the mapping tool. How has that been? Have we had any feedback from residents or small builders about if that's been accessible and easy to use?
I would say we get more feedback from internally. I think it's helped a lot because it was a big overhaul for all of us, and there are things that we didn't see happening, or new codes that, or just inherently new to everyone. And I think it's helped a lot internally. I think developers use it sometimes, I think more so because I'm internally and I work with more so our public works and our planners. I hear more about us internally using it as a guide to figure out what we need to do and how this affects certain area and how that may affect public works or planners or things like that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deja. Can you tell me a little bit more about House Bill 1293, where it says that we can't have restrictions on height and scale? What do you mean by that?
Okay, so in our development regulations, we say in a particular zone, you can have this, you can build this high of a building, this big of a building, or whatever the case may be. But sometimes in our development regulations, or I'm sorry, in our design regulations, we have certain things like setbacks, or your residential area must be set back from your commercial area, things like that, that can restrict your height, bulk, or scale. So essentially this says, hey, you can't reduce height, bulk, or scale beyond what's already allowed in that zone. So if setting back your commercial or setting back your residential or doing all these design guidelines reduces what you can put into this area based on your development regulations, then you're not allowed to do that. It should be clear and it should abide by what's in our development regulations opposed to what's in the design guidelines.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Deja. I appreciate the update.
No problem. Have the rest of your night.
Thank you, Deja. Thank you, Councilmember. Next up, we have Public Works, Subject Matter Chair, Councilmember Troutner.
Thank you, Madam President. Just one item today. I already see Melissa Dahl is here. She is going to present on the 2026 King County Flood Control District Sub-Regional Opportunity Fund for 76th Avenue South Large Pipe Storm, or Large Storm Pipe Maintenance. Thank you.
The longest title, I apologize. Yes, hello, Melissa Dahl, good afternoon. I'm an engineer in Public Works. I'm here to provide you guys an update from last October regarding the 2026 Sub-Regional Opportunity Fund allocation for this 76th Avenue Large Storm Pipe Maintenance Project. Let me start off by saying good news. We were approved of for that allocation. So that's the best news from the Flood Control District. What that actually means, reallocation of the funds. The Flood Control District basically will reallocate those funds to everyone, but you have to make sure they abide by certain specific projects. So we applied back in October. I think I left the meeting and immediately went back to my office and hit submit. So that worked out well. Best part about this is that there's no match required by the city. So this is funds we receive. So long as they fit underneath those project-specific bubbles, then we're allowed to use it as needed. So the project has to be focused on either flood controls, stormwater improvements, watershed management with a stormwater focus. So we applied for it to be used. If you can go to the next slide. And then that's the funds that we'll be receiving for this project. And then to the next slide. Perfect. And then this is for the 76th Avenue Large Storm Maintenance Project. So just a refresher for what this project would entail. The image on the left-hand side shows the project scope. It's about 2,000 feet of pipe length that we have along 76th Avenue. It outlets into Mill Creek. The reason it's so significant, it's a pretty large pipe that actually gets water from downtown. So a lot of the storm water that we have right outside our doors, all around downtown, actually feeds into this pipe and then eventually outlets into Mill Creek. So it's significant for flood control. It's significant for stormwater maintenance. So if you look at the image on the right-hand side, you'll see kind of a blue outline. That shows roughly where the pipe is located. It's a 66-inch storm pipe, so it's pretty big. It's underneath, just behind the sidewalk. We are looking at maintaining the pipe via cleaning it out and then also adding some additional structures out there. Right now, there's about the 2,000 length of pipe, and there's really only 2 structures in there to get into it, which is really different from what our current standards are. So we're looking to add about 4 structures along that length, and that allows to have more regular maintenance and inspection. So with this funds, we're going to be continuing to move towards bidding the project, and it won't cover all the work needed, but it'll cover a good portion of it. And with that, happy to answer any questions.
Questions from any of my colleagues? No? All right, I will read the motion. I move to accept funds from the King County Flood Control District Sub-Regional Opportunity Fund for the 76th Avenue South Large Pipe large storm pipe maintenance project, amend the budget as necessary, authorize the expenditures of funds, and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary agreements and other documents subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the Public Works Director and City Attorney.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Melissa, I just want to say thank you. We have great representation on the King County Flood Control District. I know there's constant conversation about funds that are there and making sure that we're spending those funds and doing it in a timely manner, that they're not always going to be there, and how do we keep doing these projects and getting that money. So we are always very grateful when they choose projects in Kent. So great work. Thank you. And with that, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilmember. Thank you, Melissa. With that, we are adjourned until 5:15 for our council workshop. Thank you all. Good afternoon. Welcome to Kansas City Council Workshop for Tuesday, January 20, 2026. We have one big item on our agenda tonight, and that's flood response update. And we have our CAO, Pat Fitzpatrick, here. Welcome.
Good evening, Council President, Council. How are you tonight?
Good.
We have for you a download of what happened a few weeks ago. As you know, we had a pretty significant weather event here that caused some flooding in the southern end of Kent. And we have all the not all the departments, I can tell you every department in the city was involved. Every employee had to step in some capacity, but we have a number of departments here are going to give a presentation. I'm going to do a quick introduction. We have a whole lot of pictures to show you, some information to provide you, so let's just kick it off here. And if you have questions, I'm not the right person to ask, but if you want to ask folks questions during their portions of the presentation, I'm sure they can answer them. So as you know, in early December, we had a high-pressure system near California that blocked weather from going south and pushed a lot of warm weather into western Washington. And this caused a series of rainstorms, windstorms, and they took direct aim at the Pacific Northwest, beginning roughly from December 8th and carrying through December 14th. So as you also know, we have a river in our city. The Green River flows through eastern King County, in through Auburn, into Kent, through Tukwila, and then out into the Duwamish down towards Seattle. That river starts at the Howard Hansen Reservoir, which is held back by the Howard Hansen Dam. Because of all this weather that came in, they were very warm storms. So during this time of year, we usually have, when we have storms, the water gets stored in the form of snow in the mountains, and this time it didn't. It came down as rain. And we had a ton of rain. The amount of rain we had was incredible. So with that amount of rain coming down, the Army Corps of Engineers, who operates the dam, the Howard Hansen Dam, had to ensure that they kept that water level low at a comfort level to them to make sure that dam maintains its integrity. So Howard Hansen Dam and the Army Corps of Engineers had to release a lot of water out of the dam. Of course, that makes the Green River rise, and that's when we had levee issues. So as you know, levees were topped, but not in Kent. Kent did not have a levee failure. I just want to stress that. And that's in large part because of all the investments the city has made in cooperation and with the partnership of the King County Flood Control District. But levees did top south of us. And that water flows to its lowest point, and the lower point is in the south end of Kent. So we did have flooding in Kent and King County and the Auburn area just over there to the south of us. So there was flooding. We did have some businesses and homes that were affected, but we were actually quite fortunate. Not too many were affected. It was not like the White River, different river system further down south in the county here. So you're going to hear from the departments what we went through. I want to give you just a quick overview of some of the key things. City of Kent was tied into the King County Flood Warning Center throughout this entire event. So we were partnering with them. We were attending meetings. We were tied in with them. We opened our operations center, emergency operations center, which was staffed by employees from I think actually every department in the city. And Public Works staffed its own DOC during this time that they were staffing 24 hours a day. The mayor issued a declaration of emergency to ensure that we could execute contracts quickly and to tinker with our labor rules to bring people back into work as quickly as we could. So we had a couple of key things you're going to hear about. In this room, we had a big meeting on a Monday morning asking for volunteers so people could go walk the levees and inspect the levees for us because we had Public Works crews operating 24 hours and they were getting tired, so we needed to supplement them. When that happened, when we were dealing with that meeting, so when we heard that the Desimone levee in Tukwila had failed. And it was quite the experience when Chad gets pulled out and I'm in the meeting thinking, that's not good. And then Dave gets pulled out and I'm like, oh, that's not good. Then the mayor and so we had that situation arise. And that was quite an event, as you know, because a warning went out in the city of Kent for a flash flood and boom, people started evacuating. Everything in the city down here in the valley locked up, and we had quite the issue to deal with. But we came through, Public Works came through in a way that you're going to find out, as you probably know by now, because of Kent, we were able to get sandbags on that levee in Tukwila. We were able to get one of our big pieces of machinery in there because of prior planning that we had done. And so that's just one example of what our city did. The other key thing that happened during that time was, as you know, northbound 167 was closed. For a while, both directions were closed, but northbound was closed for a long time because there's water on the roadway. Because of our crews and forward thinking, our city got pumps out in the area that was flooding, and we pumped the water back into the river, which lowered the water level and pulled water off of 167. Because of that action, WashDOT was able to reopen 167. So there's a lot here to be really, really proud of in terms of the actions on the ground. The other thing I would say is our whole city came together. We had multiple departments out there walking the levee. 167, we had Parks and Public Works working side by side there, doing sandbags, protecting buildings. We really came together as a group here. We had police escorting Public Works Department personnel into areas to get equipment in, evacuating neighborhoods. A lot of us in the office were on regional meetings constantly. So it was a real, these events they're tragic and they're hard, but they also pull people together, and that's what happened here with us. In addition, while all this stuff was going on, your city continued to run. People came here to get permits, and we had people coming in to pay their water bills, and we were answering phone calls and doing all the things we normally do. So there's a lot to be proud of here. So I'm going to hand it over to Public Works first. After Public Works goes, we're going to have police come up and talk about their involvement. Then we're going to have Parks come up. I think Finance is going to follow, and then ECD will follow. I will say that this event is not over because we're in a recovery mode right now. That's really where ECD is at the helm right now, helping us with that effort along with our finance department. So we're going to do that presentation. After that, we have a short video to show you. Feel free to ask questions, and I'm sure we can get them answered for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. Happy to be here today. It's been a month ago now that we closed the DOC, Saturday the 20th of December, and it had been a long 11 days prior to that when we were operating 24 hours a day. And so it was nice to be able to go in. Dave Brock walked into the DOC and said, hey, do you guys have any problems shutting down? And he got a great big wall of no back at him. Please, let's shut down. So happy to be here a month later. Glad we weathered the storm, so to speak. And it was, as Pat pointed out, really it was a tough thing to go through in that you never want to see people affected by the weather and then by flooding like we saw, particularly in the south end of town and in our neighboring cities. But I think we worked really closely with the other departments as a city and as a group of city employees. It was really nice to have everybody come together. It's about relationships, and that relationship is really strong. So I know we talk a lot about it. When we're here in front of the council, that you have a really good staff in the city staff, and in the way we interacted with other agencies, it became very apparent we do have a very good staff, and I think that's one of the reasons we came through kind of in flying colors. So you get tested by these types of events, and you never know what it's going to be like until you get tested, and it's, again, nice to be on this side and to say, hey, we did it. So we do have some things we want to make sure everybody is aware of, though. As Pat said, we're in the recovery phase, but I think we have an ongoing phase that we need to get through, planning for the next similar event. And we talk about climate change and the effects of climate change quite a lot, and we don't know exactly what it's going to be like going forward with regard to the operation of the dam. I know people don't necessarily want to hear that, but it's just the fact of the matter. We built the dam as a group, as a country, with about 35 or 40 years of climatological data. And that's not a lot when you think about the whole record. And so we're starting to gather more of that data, and we're operating the dam based on kind of old information that's getting updated from time to time. And so I want to be able to describe that just lightly, but going forward, we're we're going to need to be doing some work with the federal government, in our opinion, to try and ask some questions as to how we're operating the dam and how the levee systems are operating, because we could see this happen again. There's Pat's introduction. So very briefly, Pat already mentioned it, out to the south and east of town, the Green Duwamish watershed. The green becomes the Duwamish as it exits out through Tequila and then into Elliott Bay. So as it comes through the middle green and then lower green through Auburn and Kent, those are controlled by Howard Hanson Dam, which also provides us through the second supply pipeline some of our water, right? So we're a partner in the second supply pipeline, and Tacoma has both first and second diversion water rights up behind that dam. So that's two-part purpose for the dam: flood control and water supply. So the flood control part of it's happening all winter. They empty the dam in the fall, and as storms come through, it's a fairly a narrow and sharp valley that the dam sits in. So it fills up with a fairly big catchment area. It fills up very quickly. And so they need to get the water back out of it, particularly as Pat described. We have atmospheric rivers coming in one after the other. That reservoir will fill back up, and that's why they want to get those water levels in the green at a higher level. They want to discharge a lot of water because if back-to-back-to-back storms come through, the reservoir will fill quickly, and if it fills up to the top, they have to go to a full spillway condition, which we've never seen, hopefully we'll never see. If they have to open up the emergency spillways, we could have, so in this condition, we figure we were somewhere between 14 and 15,000 CFS coming through the river. And if anybody ventured down and took a look at it, it looked pretty darn full for what we're used to seeing. If they open those spillways up and the water's as high as the spillway, it's 100,000 CFS. So roughly, we'll call it 7 times the amount of water we saw coming through during the storm. So a big deal. And so that's one of the things. We want them to operate the dam they've been operating it, because for 60 plus years it's worked. In this event, it hadn't worked the way we've seen it in the past. So left side of this graphic, it says Auburn gauge. That's where they take measurements for the discharge coming out of the dam. So they run a big wheel. We joke around. It's just a big wheel up there, and they open it up. They do open up the discharge of the dam, and they try and target 12,000 CFS at the Auburn gauge. One of the problems we've had is that the highest historical elevation is at the Auburn gauge is 65 feet. That's above sea level. We run about 30 to 40 feet in the valley, so it's higher up in Auburn. So 65 feet on the 13th of December last month was the highest we've ever seen the gauge. They go through and they rate that gauge using high water. In other words, they wait for the water to get high, then they go in and they take some measurements. They say, okay, this is how much water we think is passing past this gauge right now. And they calibrate it that way, and then that's the new calibration that they use for the operation of the dam. So back in 2020, the USGS went in and they calibrated 12,000 CFS at the Auburn gauge. And at that time, we saw the water was higher than we'd seen it in the past. So Mike Matudis, environmental engineering manager, made a lot of calls to the Corps of Engineers and to the USGS and said, hey, this is your new 12,000 CFS, but we're seeing water higher here in Kent than we've seen in the past. Can you take another look at that calibration? Because we don't feel like it's correct. And we'd gone back and forth for about a year and a half, 2020 into 2021, trying to get them to kind of take another look at it. And they said, hey, when the water gets high again, we'll calibrate it, but for right now, we feel it's correct. So they did another series of calibrations during these high water events, and they took 6, and 5 of those, they actually increased the amount of water they thought they could pass. And then one of them, they said, oh, wait, this is too much. We're going to calibrate this back down. So we have an ongoing conversation we need to have, because we still feel that they think that they have more capacity in the river than they do, or at least that 12,000 CFS number. They're passing more than 12,000 CFS than they actually, when they think that they are passing 12. We think it's more like 13, 14, or 14 to 15 frame measurement. So that is going to be a difficult conversation, because it's a whole group of PhDs at the USGS saying we're right, and us going, well, we don't exactly agree. And the measurements that we have show that when they hit today's 12,000 CFS, it's 1.5 feet higher than it was back in 2006. And when you put 1.5 feet over this valley, you get widespread flooding like we've seen. So the mayor and Kelly Peterson are in Renton. They left about 15 minutes ago. Senator Murray convened a group and was wanting some input on emergency management and surrounding the river and input on how things went. And so that was a message we're hoping the mayor is able to deliver. So again, the other thing that we've heard is a lot of folks are saying, hey, you know, the reservoir wasn't even full. Again, we don't want it to get so full that it goes to the emergency spillway. The Corps of Engineers doesn't want that, because then you're talking about essentially uncontrolled releases down into the valley, which would be a lot of damage. And so we were 1 foot from the maximum height that has been recorded, maximum elevation, pool elevation behind the dam. The highest was back in 2020, we hit 1189. Back on the 12th of December, we hit 1188, which is 70% of full, but full again is full, not just we're going to turn it up to 12,000 CFS. That is, the reservoir is full and you're opening up the emergency spillway. So you may have heard folks saying, hey, we could have held more water up there. They could have, but only in an extreme situation. And then if another 2 series of atmospheric rivers had come through like was predicted, we could have been into that emergency spillway situation, and it would have been really bad. So that's why we saw the high water. Again, our issue is just, please send 12,000 CFS down the river like we're used to seeing, not like the amount you think you're sending or that you think you can send today. Does that make a lot of sense? Want to make sure I'm clear on that one, because it is, like I said, an ongoing issue. Prior to this, and council, particularly anybody who spent a lot of time on Public Works Committee back in the mid-2010s, talked a lot about levees and our work on the levees. So we've been making improvements, working with the King County Flood Control District. We got a lot of money through the state to make improvements in the levee system. And starting in 2011, 12, 13, 14, built the Desimone levee with a flood wall, also the Boeing levee. These performed very well during the flooding. We didn't see any major issues around those at all. We also made improvements, that's another section of the Briscoe levee, and then Upper Russell levee near the lakes, again, performed very well. And then I'll get to it here in a little bit, but just north of this Briscoe levee, about a half mile north of this, that's where the Desimone issue was that Pat alluded to earlier. We also have our side channel improvements where we put in, get the little spotlight, the Riverview side channel for fish habitat. And then the Downey side channel looks just like, if you remember the renderings we showed council quite a number of times, higher than the renderings, because again, we didn't expect it to get quite this high, but that's a lot of additional volume that we provided in the river during the event. The dates on here don't matter quite as much as the conditions. The 2013 on the left was just, that was the year we took the photo, but that's, you can see our little ribbon of the river running around Signature Point. And during the flooding event, what happens is during just about any event, we have Mill Creek, Auburn, and a couple of unnamed creeks that flow into the Green River from the south. Those creeks back up when the water level gets above about 9,000 CFS. So we were again pushing 12 and 13 plus thousand CFS. So those areas to the south of the river and south of town fill up. And so for those first several days between the 9th and into the Saturday the 13th, this agricultural area was taking on a lot of water. And so the river levels through Kent weren't quite as high, because the water was actually getting up in the river and then backing back into the agricultural area in Auburn. And that's when we had the flooding down near around the Auburn gas station and those areas around 277. So we didn't see those higher water levels until that Saturday and Sunday. However, we've been watching what was coming through. We've got a number of people, Evan Swanson sitting in the front row, Evan and Brian Bond over in operations, Mike McTutis. They all very closely watched the weather during the winter months. We've been training for the potential for levee issues since the Howard Henson Dam problems that we had back in 2009. So Mike had come over and said, hey, we're watching these potentials for an atmospheric river, and I'm watching the predictions from the Corps on water levels coming out of the dam. And on Monday, they were saying probably 7,400 to 9,000 CFS, no big deal. Tuesday morning, they came back and said, hey, we're going to have to crank this thing up and open up to about 12,000 CFS. So at 10:30 Tuesday the 9th, we opened up the DOC and we called up our operations folks. The mayor has alluded to this a couple of times. It was a day of a holiday potluck in the engineering department. Called over to operations. They said, hey, we can be out there by 1:30 with all our materials. Who do you need? Give us all the hands you can give us from engineering. So the engineering folks finished their holiday party and headed straight out to start putting these HESCO baskets up. So between 10:30 in the morning and 10:30 that night, we put up the HESCOs. I'll go to the next photo because the lower left is, obviously that's in the afternoon. On the right, lower left, we finished that up. This was probably right after the council meeting that night. I went back out there after the council meeting. This is the night Mike stayed in his office all night. Evan did as well, starting to get the levee patrols up. Kelly Peterson went home briefly, got a bedroll, came back, laid it out there, and spent the night as we were watching this HESCO wall to make sure it held up, which it did. Without that, we would have flooded south end of town. That's A1 pallets and 259th right on the left side of the picture, and A1 pallets off to the left side. So that, if we'd have failed right there, that would have continued up in the south end of downtown. So very happy, again, great staff. Mike said, hey, we need to do this. Bam, we did it. We also put those over along the east end of Signature Point up against Washington Avenue. That's in the kind of this middle picture down here, right in front of an apartment complex that's over there, and then along Signature Point. If that had backed up, we would have ended up in where the old Kmart site is, the Kaiser Permanente site, Langston Landing. We would have had flooding. Mike did a little analysis. We've had the intersection of Washington Avenue and Willis SR 516 would have been about 2 feet underwater without that HESCO basket wall up. So very happy that we did that. Again, started the levee patrols 24 hours a day on that night on Tuesday. Levee patrols were going through and recording issues, scallops in the river or along the river banks, like on the left side here where parts of the levees were getting eroded. Anything cracking in the levees, all this was taken, this information was taken and sent to King County. They had their emergency center open and they were keeping track of levee issues on the white and the cedar and the green. So we were reporting up to King County. Again, let's remember King County, the King County Flood District is in charge of these levees, but we've been in a partnership with them for the last 15 years with regard to this increased level of involvement. Just because it's our city. So if we have a failure, it's going to affect everybody here in the city. Pictures from the DOC. We actually relocated the DOC from Russell Road, our operations center, up to Station 75, thank you, out on Kent Kangley. Just wanted to make sure that we were, in case something happened, we were up and out of the water. So that eventually will be at the East Hill Operations Center, the DOC, but we've been operating the DOC out of that, out of Russell Road for decades. And again, we were able to tilt that up quickly and effectively, very, very efficiently, because we do that for snowstorms, windstorms. In fact, we'd had a windstorm earlier in the month, so we'd already had folks watching inclement weather. So moving into the 13th, this would have been on Saturday, the 13th. We had water coming through at 262nd, and there's a lot of misinformation about what happened kind of during this part of the flooding. Again, the Corps was getting information about needing to increase the flows out of the dam, and they cranked it up again higher than we've ever seen since the dam was installed or constructed in 1962. So we started seeing water coming through 262nd, just north of 272nd, this area where the auto yards are. If you're going along 167, there are all the new car auto yards down there, Alaskan Brass and Copper. 262nd is an underpass under Union Pacific Railroad that runs to the east, and then the Binford auto wrecking yards or auto recycling yards are on the other side of Union Pacific in unincorporated King County. All of a sudden, we started getting water coming through there. And we started seeing that on Friday, little amount, just a little bit, and we were thinking, okay, this is something. Saturday morning, a little bit more, and we started measuring. It was starting to come through at about 2 inches an hour. And by Saturday afternoon, we had about 3 feet of water, and it was starting to come through in a bit of a torrent. So we had one small pump station that keeps up with, in general, that whole area down there drains to the river. When we have high water and it rains, we have 2 pumps that are able to keep up with any of the rainstorms we would get to pump water into the river. They were not meant to take on water from the river being turned up to 12 and 13 and 14,000 CFS. So once we started seeing that water under 60-second, we knew there was an issue. Once we saw it coming up very quickly, we moved to try and block off the flow through there. Got on it Saturday late afternoon, but it kept coming up quicker and quicker and quicker. We had to call that operation at about 9:30 that night. We just could not stop it. Came through there at a good clip. These are the auto yards I was describing earlier. Here are those auto yards. The auto recyclers east of Union Pacific, that's Union Pacific right there. And then that underpass is where that picture was taken late afternoon that day. So left there, very defeated feeling. We tried our best, and we wished we could have gotten it taken care of there. It was kind of a Hail Mary shot to try and block the water off there and get it back over to the river. We talked to folks from the Corps of Engineers. They were out there helping out, and so did the county flood district folks. Came out and said, hey, you know, you had a good plan, good shot at this, but the water just came up too quickly for us to take care of this. So the result of that was, and this is the other reason we tried to act very quickly that day, Mike McTudis did some more good work and took a look at it and at the situation. We've never had to look at this situation before. He said, hey, you know what? If we don't block this flow off, 167 could flood. And it could flood both coming from the west side of 167 as the water's backing up from the river, but then also from the east side where this flow is coming through underneath 262nd. And it did. So we had the freeway was closed for a time. That is 277th on the south end of the city and on the far end of the picture, and then West Valley Highway over here to the right, Union Pacific to the left. At that point, we had West Valley Highway closed off. We had issues. Central Avenue was about 5 to 6 inches from going underwater. So we'd had a discussion also with King County. That's an unincorporated King County. Should we be sandbagging Central Avenue? Because it could be, other than I-5 and Military, would have been some of the only ways to get north. So there was a lot of discussion in the background about what we should try and do to keep our transportation system open. That Sunday, the next morning, we were checking out all the flooding. We talked with the Department of Transportation. They attempted to deploy sandbags on the northbound lanes to try and keep the water back from the east side of the freeway. Their contractor, they had a contracted emergency contractor that they called in. They couldn't get out there for a number of hours, so we actually hauled bags for them for about 4 or 5 hours, between 1:30 and about 5:30 in the afternoon, until their contractor was fully on site. They weren't able to get plastic down around those bags, so it was an attempt, but it didn't work. So at that point, we kind of just had to wait out what was happening on 167. In the meantime, we knew, as Pat mentioned earlier, we as a group were getting very tired. We'd been up basically since Tuesday, and we were running out of levee walkers. So Mayor made a call, called Julie, called Kurt, said, hey, can you guys help out? Can we get people trained to walk the levees? Response was tremendous. I said, we were all feeling a little threadbare. It was really great to walk into a room Monday morning and take a look at all these fresh, smiling faces. How can we help out? You know, it's like, man, I'm happy to see you guys, you know. So right in the middle of, as Pat mentioned, there's Evan doing his levee training, and all of a sudden, Bill Ellis walks up with a phone and a text message from Tukwila. We're hearing about a levee breach at Desimone. And so we're walking out of the room trying to get confirmation, and yep, there's been a levee breach in Desimone. So they finished the training. A bunch of us go north and get to, it's odd. You know, our first responders feel this all the time. The RFA's in the room, police department's in the room. We say often that Public Works, first responders for Public Works, but it's not very often we are going in when people are coming out. So there were two cars of us going in while people were evacuating those warehouses, and we're trying to go in to figure out what's going on. And it's like, well, this is weird. I should be following these folks, but here, let's go. Got up there. We actually had King County Levee Patrol and our Levee Patrol had noted an issue at Desimone before anything happened. So in the picture on the left, there are 3 areas where there's bubbling, boiling material. This water was coming through the underneath subterranean flow and up through the backside of the levee. And so we knew there was a problem. We didn't expect an imminent failure. That can happen. You see we're moving dirty water. If there's clean water, you're usually not as alarmed, but if it's dirty water, there's a problem. So it was within tens of minutes after the county and our staff had been through there, sent warning to the county that, hey, you've got a problem here, and then the failure happened. We got really lucky. The failure, we think, happened low. It actually just kind of spilled out toward the warehouse. The levee fell down on itself, and then you'll see in this picture, all that asphalt on the top of the levee, it locked in on itself right where the water surface elevation was. If it had gone down any lower, the water would have rushed through there and moved the material out. As it was wide enough, and at just the right elevation, it equalized right there. So we were able to get out there and start a repair. And luckily, the water was receding at this point. The Corps had turned the dial back down. Detail I missed, back on Friday before all this happened, before everything happened at 262nd, Mike and I had called the Corps and said, hey, can you guys, turn it down a little bit or just hold steady? We think we can handle it, but if you turn it up much more, we're going to be inundated with water. They said, yeah, we think we're going to be able to hold it steady. Within about 10 to 15 minutes, Mike said he could see on the gauge that the water was going up. So it was like, okay. So at this point, after we had issues, we think they did turn it back down, and they were able to hold it steady for the remainder of the event. But this one, we dodged a bullet. We were able to, we already had, and again, we've been planning for the potential for one of these levee issues, a potential levee failure for a number of years. We have material on site, staged in various places around town. So we were able to load up trucks and get them there in a hurry. We worked with the county. We were able to get there first. The county did have an excavator on site because they were working on another repair. It had a hydraulic line failure on like the 4th bag. So they were dead in the water, no pun intended. We ended up, I'm calling Dave Brock on the phone. Hey, can we get an excavator down here? Yeah, but there's all the traffic because at this point, the evacuation order had been sent out and everybody was leaving warehouses and Tequila and Renton, everybody's leaving, you can't get anywhere. Again, it's about relationships. So what do? You call up the chief. Hey, chief, can we get a police escort from where we have this excavator to the site? You bet. Just tell me where we need our guys to go. So, and I don't know if people have seen the videos on social media, but our guys said it was the most fun they've ever had, getting a police escort to get to where they needed to go. But we were there in about 15, 20 minutes with the bags. We had people backing. The first load of bags was actually on a trailer. We had to back down the levee for about a half mile. Amazing that we got down there, but provided those first materials to get that repair started and then worked into the night with the county. They were able to get another excavator on site later on in the afternoon. You can see this aerial photo. That's Kent Equipment and Trucks there on the right. And then later on in the evening, this is just before, I think the counties had made it there with the second excavator, and we were able to work it from both sides. But that was all buttoned up by about 10 o'clock that night. So, made it through Monday. Let's go into Tuesday, and this is again about relationships. We were able to get, we started having discussions with the Department of Transportation. When can we open the freeway? Well, we don't know if there's still water coming in. So the police department brought in their drone and flew the whole area down there to determine we didn't have more water coming in. So we knew if we started pumping out the area between 167 Union Pacific, 277th, and the freeway, that we wouldn't just be recycling the water, we'd actually be able to get the water receded and get the freeway open. So Again, relationships. Our folks have a good relationship with Xylem here in town. They are a pump company. And so all the pumps seen in the foreground here, when everything started happening on Saturday and Sunday, one of our guys contacted Xylem and said, we want every pump we can get our hands on. And so by Wednesday, we were deploying those pumps near the airport levee pump station to start pumping out that whole area. It took us about a day and a half to get that pump down, and then by Friday afternoon, 167 was open. So these are the stories. I don't think they really got out on the news, but it was pretty cool to be a part of, to get that thing open and get people back to closer to normal. Post-flood event, we've got repairs underway. There were repairs done during the event, again, in close coordination with King County, and we're helping them look through what needs to get done next. And I think I probably took a little extra time, but there's a lot to go for.
Councilmember Troutner.
Thank you, Madam President. Chad, thank you so much for being here, and thank you very much to your crews. So I know some of our levees are certified to like a 1-year or 100-year flood event. Do we have some that are 500-year? What are they calling this?
Yeah, so we have some that are certified to 500-year plus 3 feet, and others that are 100-year plus 2 to 3 feet, depending where you're at. This extra 1.5 feet, that's the new issue because of this USGS gauge. That's causing us a real issue because in order to get accreditation, you have to have that freeboard, that extra 3 feet. We don't have that now if they go with the rating curve as is. So that's part of the ongoing discussion. We know that we have those 2 areas where we put the HESCO bags out. That's where we're really short of freeboard. Everywhere else where we thought we had 2 to 3 feet of freeboard, we have at least a half foot. So it makes me nervous, but it's better than no freeboard.
Can I have a follow-up question? Do we remove those HESCO bags yet? Are we keeping them in place?
In until spring.
Yep, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Continue, Pat.
So before we have the chief come up, I just want to note a couple things. So you saw that picture that Chad just showed with the pumps, the orange pumps. Funny story, we were all heading up to activate the EOC up at Station 7-4, and about 5 of us got stuck in traffic because there was a huge truck with these big orange pumps making a left turn, and it couldn't make the turn until all the other cars backed up, and I was like, those look like pumps. We could use those. I was like thinking, man, we need those. And the next day I was out on 167 chatting. There's all the pumps. They were driving them into town. So it was kind of funny. But the other thing I just want to say is we have members from the Regional Fire Authority here today, Will Lugo, Kimberly Baymeyer, and Chief Pollock. The RFA was instrumental in this process. Just want to give them a shout out. They helped us open the EOC, schooled us up on that, got our plans dusted off. You never think you're going to need that stuff until you do, and it was really great to have them on board, and they've been instrumental in the communications. Chief Pollock, you know, there were a bunch of us in here who were on a call at midnight on a Saturday with the King County EOC, trying to make sense of 15 people talking at the same time and just the commotion. And it was really helpful to have them on board because emergencies is what they do. So they were a huge partner in this and will be moving forward, and they're helping us with the recovery efforts too. So next up is Chief and Chief.
I was going to say good morning. Good evening. I'm going to say a quick few words and turn it over to Deputy Chief Stansfield, who will do our part of the presentation. I just want to take a moment to say we have a really good story to tell, as you've already seen and already heard. And the reason why it's a good story to tell is because, first off, while people lost property and they were flooded and displaced for a while, which is tragic, there were no loss of life during this. We had some people that needed rescuing from the water, maybe some bad choices about going around barriers and things like that. But in the end, the city really stepped up and did their job, and I'm really proud of that, not just from a police department perspective, but from a city perspective. We got an opportunity to see what happens in a crisis, a real crisis, in our city that is citywide, and very, very proud of our partnering departments. Big kudos to Public Works and Parks and finance and everybody in law and everybody behind the scenes doing the work. So that's a good story. You've heard some incredible things. There's some things that I don't know that we're intending to share, but one thing I observed that I wanted to say is that when it took to making decisive action, like securing a levee, bringing in pumps to open a freeway, coordinating these things, we move at a pace that's much quicker than I think pretty much everybody around us. And I'm just going to say it. There were times when we basically had to say, we got it, please get out of our way. And that's predominantly Public Works and the attitude and the culture they brought to the problem. So just wanted to say that. And I'll turn it over to Deputy Chief Stansfield, who's going to present our portion of it.
Thanks, Chief. Good evening, everyone. Happy to be here to kind of walk you through what the police department did during this emergency. Mainly, I would say, to help Public Works and some of the people who are doing some really heavy lifting that you guys have already kind of seen. So our response, our initial response started for the police department really on the 14th. That's when the first evacuation orders started coming out, largely in Auburn at that point. But there was a lot of Kent residents that were affected by these evacuation orders. There's a couple neighborhoods south of the river along West Valley Highway or Washington there that are Kent residents. There's a mix of unincorporated county in there as well. But the water came up really, really quickly in those neighborhoods, and they got notices to evacuate. One thing that we did see, and it's common throughout this entire event, was that the reverse 911 system and text system and the things that people are signed up through their cell phone on, those things really do work. And largely when we're responding, the people that we're going to contact, we're just checking to see if they need help. They already know what's going on. They've told their neighbors, things like that. So that's a lot better place for us to be in than knocking on a door at 2 in the morning, because that's when this happened, was about 2 in the morning. We had 2 of our newest patrol sergeants. They were both out there and didn't probably think they were going to be doing that night. But knocking on doors is a lot harder way to do it than meeting somebody in their driveway that's already packing their stuff and is largely ready to go. And so that was a big help. The technology at that point was working really, really well. Those people knew what was going on. We helped them. We did have to go in. One of our patrol sergeants rode in with the resident on a tractor. Unfortunately, there's no pictures of that she would give me. But to go check, I think, on an elderly person that we weren't sure was out of their house. But that all happened, and we got those areas evacuated. So this is like the first major kind of event for us that we had that evening on the 14th. And that was largely concluded by about 4 or 5 in the morning. We kind of knew what was going on, and we felt pretty good that everybody was out of that neighborhood and safe. But it was all on-duty officers at that point. So I would say all but I think 1 officer in the city was working on that at that point. Right off the bat after that happened, we recognized in talking with Public Works about what some of our dangers were. We were worried about inundation. We have the jail down there, and if you ever go down to the jail and look, right out the back of the jail is the river. And it looked really, really high, and it made us worry just like it made all the residents worry. And so we started developing a plan, and right now we currently have a contract with the Yakima County Jail to house inmates. So we leveraged that and said, hey, how many inmates could you take? Could you take all the inmates? We started running through plans who possibly was maybe on a sentence where we could safely release them. They were serving their sentence, but maybe not for a crime of violence or something that would be in the public interest to keep them in custody. And so we kind of segregated out, and the people that were really needed to be kept and who maybe could be released and come back and serve their sentence later. And ultimately we ended up sending 33 inmates over to Yakima County. And that was through a combination of our correction staff and their correction staff helped us, sending vans over and got the jail population down to where it wasn't empty, but we felt that if we had to evacuate it in a number of a few hours, we could do that. We just wanted to get it to a smaller amount because the jail is habitually pretty full. Right now it's right almost back up at capacity, and we just knew that having a smaller population would help that. So that all kind of happened over the course, starting on the 15th and into the 16th. The next thing that we helped respond to, and this date's actually wrong, this happened on the 15th, was our response to the levee breach up at Briscoe and Tukwila. And our part of that response really was getting into the area that was thought was going to be inundated immediately and going through there. The good thing about that is that's largely not very densely populated, but it's a lot of businesses. The exception to the densely populated spot, there's a hotel there. We weren't really sure what they were going to do. But much like our response the first evening, we found largely when we went to these places, the people there knew what was going on and knew they needed to leave. The hotel, for example, was already under the way evacuating. They'd already had a plan. We tied off with management. We started to do some coordination to like, hey, do they need a bus or things like that? That just wasn't the case. They were well underway by the time we got there. But the big thing was the traffic in the area was because everybody got a message on their phone and everybody decided to pick a different way to leave, and there was a lot of misinformation going around. So we ended up doing an amount of traffic control during this evacuation phase and checking on these businesses. Most of the businesses were pretty aware of what was going on as well. Businesses, they largely know where all their employees are. They're kind of required to, and so they most of the businesses were on the way to be closed by the time we got to them, but not all. And we did provide some escort or blocking traffic so they could just get out of there. At the same time that this levee breach happened, there was reports of a levee breach south of this, down near Columbia Distributing. Those proved to be unfounded. Their levee was seeping there, but we went down and checked it with both patrol officers went down there and flew a drone down there and found it. What they thought was happening, like was happening at this levee, wasn't happening down there. It was after that, shortly after that, that we stood up the ECC. Chief Padilla and I, along with members of the RFA, Public Works team, Parks, stood up a unified command so we could start making decisions. We just kind of recognized after that levee breach that was going to need to be in place, and have the ability to get resources was really, be coordinated was really coming into focus for us. The whole time, one of the things that we put up there is we put a police commander up there to staff the operations position, operations chief in the emergency operations center, and that way they have a really good connection to what's happening out in the community through both 911 and other ways we get information. And we had that staff. Commander Baba and Commander Mills had that for the duration of the incident. Not long after that, almost corresponding, we recognized the traffic was really limiting our ability to help Public Works get people in where they needed to get in. And so we had started with a series of escorts that Chad referred to. So that was a lot of fun for us too, as far as we like to be able to go and help something that's really important happen like that. And I think the coordination and the relationships that existed before this event were just kind of brought into focus. So we escorted dump trucks, we escorted Public Works engineers to sites that were believed to be at risk, because if any of you were in the valley on that 12 to 24-hour period, the traffic was really terrible. Between 167 being closed and all the emergency alerts going out, the city became, the north end of the valley became really, really hard for traffic. So these traffic escorts were critical. The next thing we did was helping Public Works. As Chad alluded to, they needed to figure out really if pumping that water out would be effective. So we set up to fly a drone over the area marked on the map here. So the double gray line there on the left is 167. So it's an area mostly all east of 167 and south of the river. But we used the drone to fly over. Couldn't get in there on foot or in a boat or anything like that. And the drone just provided us the real-time ability to take pictures and assess with Public Works over our shoulder telling us what they needed to see. And that was crucial in getting that area checked out. Later that day is when we started to get some reports that in the evacuated area there might be some crime going on, looters, people going in. Some people had gone back to check on their stuff and seen people they didn't recognize, vehicles they didn't recognize. So we started security patrols, at first with drones because we couldn't get in there safely with vehicles, but then later on vehicles. Through the duration of the evacuation, that's always a risk that exists as people come in and try to take advantage of these situations, and so we wanted to deter that. We ended up taking, I think, a couple of case reports. I don't know that anything was actually taken, but just a suspicious people and vehicles in the area. People obviously casing or being on people's property looking for some crime. So these photos here are pictures that are taken. These are actually at night. It's using the infrared system on the drone. Really, really good for looking. You can really see a person. They stand out on that. So we were able to do those all 24/7, and we had a schedule that was put in place for that. And then just, I want to take a second just to end some of the things that we really learned, because I think this is really important. We had plans for a flood. We had plans back during 2009. But as we got, that's 15, 16 years ago, not the same people are around that were going to execute those plans or wrote them. They don't know, we don't know everything. And then there's a lot of things that have changed since then. So we had a chance to proof a lot of things. And some of the big things that came for us is proofing our evacuation routes, which are pretty much, they're the same evacuation routes we would use in 2009, but a wrinkle like closing 167. If you close 167, it makes the city a lot harder to evacuate. And so we had to contend with that. So that was really why it was such a priority for, I think, the entire city to get that highway opened up, because we found it was going to be really difficult to pull off an evacuation if we had another breach, if that was closed. We also spent quite a bit of time looking at our vulnerable facilities, things like nursing homes. Over at Washington and Willis, we have a mental health care facility that would have to be evacuated, and making sure things like that. Do we have good contact information, head counts at all those places, and know what kind of resources they're going to need to safely evacuate? So we proofed all that, and then integrating in how we would use other technologies and coming up with something like a flight schedule for drones and staffing for things like that, to make sure we can keep an eye on the city when you can't drive in all of it. And that really proved to be critical for us. So that kind of wraps up what we did for the police department during this event. The jail's back open. We've brought everybody back from Yakima, minus the people that we were keeping there on our normal 10-person. We have about 10 people there on contract right now. But most of that's all been recalled back. So minus if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer, but I'll turn it over to, I think, Parks.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, looks like our Parks Director is coming up.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Good evening. I think for me, I very much echo what my colleagues have already said. I was going to get up and say ditto, but I do have an update because it was very interesting. I learned a ton. This was actually my first ECC event here at the City of Kent. So I guess in 10 years we haven't had, so that's good. So I learned a lot, and I just wanted to, shout out to the RFA and to both Chief and Deputy Chief. They were really helpful because they live in that command structure, so it was a really great experience for me. Both myself and Brian Levenhagen, our Deputy Director, were part of Unified Command because we were all working on resources and stuff together. Parks had their red and blue teams staffed, ready to mobilize if we needed to. We didn't have to go as deep, so that's good. So my team was able to focus mostly on response, which was good. Also participated in all the calls. Our CAO mentioned there was a lot of conversation, a lot of dialogue occurring all at once. The other thing that Parks really assisted with was communication. Not only were we communicating our own park closures and impacts, we were constantly pushing the city messaging out because messaging was so critical that it was accurate and the same and consistent. So we have a big reach, and we were able to continue that. We estimate around 1,800 hours Parks spent working on this event in all different kinds of ways. And then we obviously continue to work in our own internal operations. The other thing we had was our Human Services team, which I didn't actually put up here. Our Human Services team was working with a lot of community organizations, regional providers, on making sure our transients and encampments were able to get, because we have a lot along the river. Happy to share, they obviously self-regulated themselves and could see that coming, so we didn't necessarily have any impacts, but we were all coordinating some of that efforts. Christmas Rush was our first impact as this event got started. This was a little bit of a heartbreaker. We were in our 43rd year here, and we have never canceled. We've had rain, snow, storms, and we've never canceled. But the day prior, we started getting word the river was rising. We were like, it's okay, we can still have the race, because we do run all the way along the river. The day before, it started coming over the water, and we were like, oh, we have to, so we went ahead and canceled, made a decision, canceled. Obviously, it was the right decision, because the very next day it was even worse. We did have around just under 800 participants, and we usually have about around 100 day of participants, and that's one of our largest since post-COVID. We've been working our way back, and so kind of a bummer that we had to cancel. We did try, and we were thinking of different routes, but a 5K and a 10K, that's a lot to try and do. We need the trails, and so unfortunately the trails were all along the rivers. So there was no way we could do a fast pivot. So we did, of course, cancel, called everybody, advertised it everywhere. We did lose around a little bit under $20,000 in revenue on that race. between participant revenues and sponsorships. We did have some sunk costs. We already, bought all the t-shirts, did all that kind of stuff. What was really great, though, was the positive response from the runners and the racers, because we had a lot of processing of refunds. So thank you to Finance for helping us with that, because that's a huge to-do. There was probably, I would say, a quarter to a third, basically said, right call, Kent, keep our participation fee and so on, and just went ahead and let us keep that so we didn't have to refund. So that was really great to have the support of the community and understanding what we're trying to do there. Parks also had, some of our impacts areas. Ours started around December 10th. We had about 7 primary parks impacted during this time. And all of, obviously, our trail system and our underpasses, which we'll talk about here in a minute, that got impacted. On average, our parks were probably closed in this area about 2 to 3 weeks until those waters could recede. Trails and underpasses took a little while. And then, of course, Lake Meridian, which people don't think about, but that water kept coming higher and higher and higher. And that actually took the longest to get back down to normal levels. It's reopened now, so everything's back reopened. The other thing, I just wanted to show a couple pictures. So, of course, you've seen Van Dorn's, which is, of course, the green. This is where we probably had some of the most challenges, which is our trail system under the overpasses. A lot of times we have a lot of significant cleanup too, because as the water was running, we've got a lot of sediment now and a lot of debris that we were cleaning off. So we're clearing trails. They are reopened, but there was a lot of impacts we had to close and monitor. So park staff was out in our systems probably multiple times a day communicating. We stood up our own DOC to really communicate with each other and how are we communicating to the public. We did 2 updates daily just so people knew what parks to avoid, and it was good. Our biggest challenge was people thinking it was cool to go out and take pictures and video when they were really putting our risk. So we had to switch marketing, and communication to try and get them to stay away, and that this isn't like water fun. It was there was quite a few impacts. So our staff was doing a lot of monitoring and making sure we had people out there. Old Fishing Hole, we did have some damage to our totem pole out there when water saturates art pieces at times. It does that long, so we have some, several $1,000s for repair there. Three Fishing Hole, we also had our sculptures out there. Those got damaged, but for the most part, parks were able to kind of recover and obviously absorb the water. One of the challenges which wasn't mentioned is in the middle of this massive storm, we had a windstorm. So the windstorm, while not as severe, we had a lot of waterlogged trees and things, so we did lose a couple trees, a lot of debris in all the other parks, so our staff was definitely busy during this time for sure. And then obviously it's been said before, I just want to articulate and share it again. It was really great to work and support and see the teamwork between Parks and Public Works and Police and all the frontline departments joining together. We were obviously managing our own parks, but our second priority and then turned into our first priority was how to support our colleagues in Public Works. They were running 24-hour operations and they really needed some help. Our first assignment, of course, was filling sandbags, very laborious, hard, and monotonous role, but they did it. Both Parks and Public Works really made sure they were, had music and food and just keep going. I believe it was 8,000, Dave. I think it was 8,000 sandbags were prepped during this time, and that was fast. And so they were all in good spirits, and it was good to see everybody kind of working together because they were working also extended hours and shifts and so on. We did place sandbags in certain facilities that we thought, just out of abundance of caution, our new ASB building, City Hall, obviously the courts with the jails, but lucky we didn't have to actually place, anywhere around, which was good, but we were ready just in case. Whoops, let me go back. We also did have park staff on levee patrols, very interesting. I did attend the safety water training. It was interesting and, and very honestly, in my opinion, very risky. And I'm super proud of Public Works for all the work that they did because as they were going through training, the whole time I was like, ooh, and oh, and it's very risky out there. And our staff was out there all together and just being very conscious of that. And so just proud of us all. We also relocated a lot of our high asset equipment from Russell Road, just in case Russell Road shops got inundated with water and certain supplies. Parks also shifted some of our work crews to not work at the shops and actually moved them up to Keehawk. So we did some manipulation of where our staff was actually located as well. We also assisted with the 167, getting it up to speed. We're working in lockstep with Public Works, and then also supported the Desmond levy. I think it's funny because Andy Martin, one of our equipment drivers, was one of the people that got escorted in, and you know, to see him, I mean, he had a smile on his face. He thought that was really great to be able to do that. So it was all of our team just did a great job. Riverbend is probably the one that got probably hit the worst because unfortunately for the way Riverbend is built, they have, you know, the river on one side goes around and then the river on the driving range side. And so Eric and team over there, we had to close most of the back 9 for about 3 weeks because it was inundated. You can't quite see it in the picture, but that is a golf flag in the restroom that was like high up. So we definitely had a lot of water. What am I gonna do? Let me see. Oh, look at me. Right there, that's the restroom, and there's a golf flag. You just can't see it because it's underwater, so water got pretty high in the back 9. We did have quite a bit of damage because a lot of our garbage cans, picnic benches started lifting and kind of floating, and so we had to do, you know, some work there, flag poles, all that good stuff we worked on. Had several greens damaged, so there is a recovery phase here at Riverbend as well. Driving range, we only closed a couple days out of caution. We were watching, that side has a signature point levy, so we were watching a couple areas and just wanted to make sure we didn't want to have a lot of people there just in case, but we didn't have too bad of an impact on the driving range. All in all, wasn't as bad. I was really stressing there because I was all like, woo, we made a profit, but not too bad. We're about maybe just under 40,000 of revenue loss. Our restaurant only closed, that was their call to close. We didn't force them to close. They closed only 2 days, and so they were able to kind of run and operate during the whole storm as well. So all in all, for the most part, everything turned out okay, and we're just still working on restoring our greens and so on. And then finally, the last thing that we did in parks was, which I learned, parks in our city's emergency plan is responsible for mass sheltering. In this particular incident, the ECC really needed us to work on a sheltering plan for about 500 to 1,000 and how will we shelter in case something happened. So our job was to really build the framework of the plan. If mobilized, that would be the whole ECC kind of helping us in all the logistics and operations. And the intent was about 500 to 1,000. And obviously we didn't want to bring people in the valley because we have the Kent Commons. Sure, we could support the Kent Commons, but we didn't want to bring people to downtown. We needed to get them out of there. So what we decided to do was create a kind of a tiered structure where the Kent Commons might be where you can just quickly drop off, dry off, get some water, call your relatives, do whatever you need to do, and you can either then go to more longer term shelter or go to your family. We worked with Showware, thanks to ECD, who helped work with Showware as an overflow site only. So just in case there was that large of an incoming, we could use Showware and the breezeways and all that to try and house people. So the next one was trying to figure out, okay, I need longer term, anywhere from 2 to 5 days, and where would we put that? So it made sense that this particular time frame, it was right when Christmas break started with the schools. So the schools with all of their infrastructure was a perfect fit for us. We immediately began working with our school district partners, and they of course offered up the elementary school gym. So we need about 100 square foot per kind of cot space. So that means I would have to have, 30 plus, and that wasn't good. I needed their high school gym, so I was trying to do that. A little bit of a struggle because they had all their sports, but, working with Mayor Ralph, she was able to call, and the school district then committed in writing. We could use all their high school gyms to be able to set up and establish like a Red Cross shelter for 2 to 5 days. So I just want to thank, obviously Showware and our school district partners. They documented and put in writing they were here to support the community of that community. So thank gosh, that we didn't have to do that, but we were prepared and ready to in there. The other part we had to really think through was transportation with transportation partners, whether it's a school bus system, Metro Transit, our own city vans, in case people couldn't get to places, how will we mobilize? We had some of our staff. Auburn did actually set up their shelter in their community center. So we had recreation staff go over there and start monitoring and talking with Red Cross and trying to figure that out, just to kind of see their operations, like where would you crate pets and all that good stuff. So we've got a really solid plan framework now that we'll continue to build on that we actually didn't have before. So this really helped us kind of push that going forward. So again, just grateful we didn't have to use it, but we were prepared just in case. So lots of great things there. And again, just echoing everything else, you know, we actually have started doing our post-event debriefs and what do we have to do differently and that kind of thing. And then I'm also just super proud of the city and super proud of all the departments for their work. So, well, that's all. Any questions?
Councilmember Larmer.
Yeah, a couple questions. At the very beginning, you talked about a red and blue team. Oh, sorry. Let me do that again with the mic. At the very beginning, you talked about a red and blue team. Can you?
Yeah, it's basically a staffing structure that helps staff the ECC by sections, planning, operations, logistics, that kind of thing. And so they just kind of keep rotating. So every department has representatives. So in case there is a big demand, staff can rotate and do these operations. And so they're trained and they're ready. And when you sign up to be on the red and blue team, you are ready to mobilize, and you know your time could be a 24-hour or whatever. And so in our case, we're kind of the middle. And so we didn't have to get as mobilized, but we were prepared. So, and along with finance, ECD, everybody has a representative on both sides.
Okay, great.
Did I explain that?
And then
Yeah.
one additional question. In the, preparing for the mass sheltering, you talked about 500 to 1,000. Do we, like, the cot situation, do we have those supplies somewhere, or is that like a
No,
Red
we'd have to
Cross?
source. We had around 100 immediate access, but then we would have to immediately source if we had to mobilize. And what we were doing is keeping in constant contact, obviously, with, being on Unified Command and with our Public Works colleagues, that we would have known immediately if the water, and that was one of the benefits we talked about. There was a lot of wording called flash flooding, all that. It wasn't a flash flood like a tidal wave. We would have had time to try and source some of that stuff and moving forward, but no, we only had about 100.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Julie?
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Thanks. We're getting close. We're going to transition now to kind of what we're doing now, because this is, like I said, this isn't over. So Paula's going to come up and talk for a minute. One thing I want to say is for example, cots. RFA has those cots, and they're available to us on demand. And then we will leverage other resources, Red Cross, et cetera, when we need that. So, all right, so I'm going to call Paul up. Thanks, Paul.
Good evening, Council President, members of City Council. I think one of the things that you're going to find, at least I found even through the whole theme of this, is all the collaboration that it took amongst all of the different departments to really navigate this entire process. That even came down to the financial side of the house, and I'm really grateful for members of all the various departments who really pitched in to make sure that we had everything that we needed to go to get things done, including members of the RFA. I don't want to forget them as well. I've worked a lot with Kimberly trying to make sure that we're prepared to be able to move forward, to be able to look to see what we can do to be able to pay for the costs of this. Right now, we've been putting together some numbers, and they're very rough at this point in time, but we're estimated about $1.2 million in costs to be able to navigate this. Between some of those costs are, if you look at equipment that we're using out there, there's cost to be able to use that equipment. And so there's a rate that FEMA assigns for that. So we apply that rate to the time that we spent out there. You look at the overtime that was worked by the various employees. You look at the damage that was caused to various pieces of our infrastructure as well. So there are things that are out there that we're looking at. One of the things that are going to be really challenging is to whether or not we're actually going to get FEMA funding. That's a great big question mark. So what are we going to do about that? Right now, what we've done is we've created what we call a project. And so it's meaning a special bucket that we're going to take all the costs that we've incurred to be able to navigate this flooding event, and we put it there. The reason why we're segregating it separate from everything else, even though we don't have a specific funding source for it, is because if we do get a grant, we need to be able to justify all of our costs, and they're going to want to audit to make sure that those expenses were used specifically for that. So right now, those costs are getting recorded into this bucket that we're gonna be able to have should a grant come through. If we do get a FEMA grant, FEMA is not gonna cover 100% of our costs. Let's assume that they'll cover 75% if they cover anything, and I want to put that big if out there. Then we do have to look at where are we going to cover the rest. And so this really, how do we cover the rest? Or if FEMA doesn't cover it, how are we going to cover the whole cost? And the exercise is going to be very similar. What I can say is that we have been very lucky because we have a good, healthy reserve. Our healthy reserve is designed for cases like this. We will be analyzing the expenditures to decide what makes sense to tap into those reserves and what makes sense to continue using the funding source that would have originally been paid for out of. So we have to really analyze that, and that will be a dialogue that will happen within the finance department, and also again in collaboration with other directors within the city to talk about what that all might look like. But at the moment, we're leaving those dollars, those expenses in that bucket for us to come back and reassess later. So what that's going to mean for you guys is that once we have determination about what's going to happen with FEMA, then we'll be coming back to you and saying, hey, we need to do a budget change, because we're going to do a budget change now to move dollars into that bucket to cover those costs, whether there's FEMA dollars or city dollars, but we will be having to look at that. So that is where we're at this point in time on the finance side. Do you have any questions?
Yes, question, Paula. So the funding that potentially state or county might have, would we have access to that for covering costs here?
If we can get access to that, we would definitely, anywhere we can reach out for funding, we'll definitely be doing that. And I don't know if my friends at the Fire Authority would even have more options to be able to share with us or not in that regard. But if they do, they're welcome to come up here and tap me on the shoulder, and I'll be happy to move out of the way.
Thank you. All right, any questions or comments for Paula? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to Kurt now.
Good afternoon. Thanks for this. I know we're getting close to time, so I'm going to do my best to kind of get us through and get us back to a calendar that we can make work here. So we've been talking a lot about recovery. About response, and the work that my colleagues have done at the city has been remarkable. We're going to say it probably 3 more times here this evening. I want to transition now over to the recovery side. So December 19 was kind of the day we threw that lever into moving into the recovery mode. So Puget Sound Fire has been an immense help for us all the way through this thing. They were also very instrumental on the kind of first stage of recovery, if you will. So what we call public assistance, there's effectively filling out all the forms that Paula just mentioned so we can hopefully get some recuperation back on the funding that we've spent thus far. So huge aspect of it, and again, RFA has been incredible throughout this, helping on the assist. I think what we have learned through things like COVID or other emergencies is it's the businesses, the residents, and things like that where we go through on the recovery side, and it's not just can you safely occupy a building, or is it okay to go back in? There are deeper themes, financial issues that the private sector is going to face that I'm not minimizing the public sector side of it, but that's really where it gets complicated. And again, we don't have a ton of tools, especially financial tools, but what we do have is a city that is completely committed to taking care of this community. So that's really kind of how we're transitioning into this recovery piece. For that reason, on that date, the mayor kicked off, I think the 19th must have been a Friday because it was coming into a weekend. The mayor wanted to basically address that private need, and so she created our private property recovery team. ECD is in fact leading that team. We started out with a very small group of folks, but by the end of that weekend, it truly did morph into that kind of one Kent process where we had colleagues on left and right of us that we were just attached at the hip with throughout this process. So just wanted to kind of point that out is it's new and it's different for us. So something you might not know, we just touched on a moment ago, is the assistance really gets broken up into two buckets. We talked about the public assistance. That's how is the government going to kind of dig us out of the hole here if there's FEMA monies or whatever it's going to be from the state. The second type is that individual assistance. So residents, owners, renters, community associations, obviously our businesses. The private properties recovery team, we really are only going to be focusing in on kind of the longer project, which is now going to be that individual assistance piece. When we kicked off, we had a few priorities that we wanted to establish. First, we wanted to understand who was affected. Makes sense and it's obvious. How bad was it? After that, we wanted to reach out and connect with those individuals, let them know, frankly, the city cares. And we wanted to know and understand their needs better as we move into the next stages. We created a no wrong door process. Think of all the calls that are coming into the city, Parks Department, the Mayor's Office, Permit Center. We needed our staff united on how we message and give resources to those calls that are coming in random hours and random places. So we worked really hard on that one. Majority of recovering funds distribution is at the federal and state level. Paula just mentioned it. These entities work with counties, who of course work with cities to collect the information and kind of move it through the system. It was important that we quickly reached out to our businesses and residents to connect them to any and all resources that were identified at that moment. We wanted to amplify the efforts where residents and businesses could hopefully be eligible for funding. Here's the rub, is we also needed to manage expectations going forward. For example, both the state and Fed directed cash funds are limited for people that had major damage. And it's, their properties potentially are just completely destroyed. Even then, funds only cover up to about $40,000 max. And so, and that's only for under or uninsured needs. So if you just start doing that across the board, if you really do have mounting losses, that's a drop in the bucket. So it's, while we're reaching out to these individuals and having the conversations, which is difficult, we also had to kind of temper expectations going forward. So the assistance, I'm just going to say, if it comes, is intended to be a supplemental program, not meant to cover the needs. The state has released $3.5 million. It's great. If you look at the number, that sounds big. It's $3.5 million for the state. And so when you start looking at, if you guys recall a few weeks ago, how dramatic the events were from Snohomish to King, Pierce, we were not alone in this event. And so, again, if they meet eligibility requirements, that effectively means they're eligible for about $1,000. So again, looking at what the need is and what the funds, how they exist today, it's tricky. So we're not certain. I'm just going to say it this way. We're not certain the federal government is going to be providing any individual assistance funding. We just don't know. We are, many stages removed from that process. The state goes through a pretty routine process where we're going to go gather information. You've heard it earlier this evening about the property assessment surveys. That's what we were doing, is trying to get folks to fill out those surveys, submit them through the county, up through the state, basically to get their issues, recorded so they are known. After the information is collected, of course, it gets sent up through FEMA. It goes through a federal review process. It's characterized on the image here. It can take months, and the takeaway is it is not guaranteed. So recent examples, mid-summer last year, 2025, a disaster declaration in Colorado, 2 fires, a big flood. It was about $40 million, a little more than $40 million in damage. Went through, did the scenario I just described, went up through FEMA, and it ultimately was denied. 2 more states, subsequent to the Colorado example I just mentioned, same exact thing has happened. And of course, those states, there's an appeal process, you go through it. Point is, it's a bumpy road ahead, and we're going to do everything that we can to assist, but we cannot guarantee any of the monies. We're not controlling that bucket. I'm going to go back to the private property recovery team now. So what we did, kind of post-event, is we're working with all of our experts kind of throughout the departments, the GIS teams. So ECD has some, obviously the Public Works team was absolutely crucial for us. We identified areas that, I'm going to say, probably had flooding. Again, reverse back to when this is happening. We weren't sure which properties were and which properties weren't flooded. So we worked with the GIS team to identify parcel numbers and ultimately addresses and phone numbers, which I'll get to in a moment. They were either directly impacted or indirectly impacted. Indirectly, think the roads were closed. They couldn't get into their properties if it was a business or a residence, or it might have been the front of their property might have had inundation. We needed to clearly divide those two types of properties. What we did, the GIS data has been used by the private property recovery team for all of our communications. It's basically how we built our database. Kind of go through it here in a moment, for all of our flood recovery central communications that we sent out. We used our business license information, our utility license information to try and get us, I mean, having a parcel number and an address is one thing. We needed to talk to the people. And so, you know, we have email addresses that were years on file that might not exist anymore, but we did our level best. We started out that first, right after the weekend, with about 118 emails and phone numbers, basically contacts. By the end of that first week, I had well over 200. So just, I guess, well, Kristen's here with me, but Kristen Holdsworth, Matt Gilbert, and myself, right before the holiday weekend. So it must have been, we started on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, started making those phone calls. So between the three of us, we reached out to 25 businesses where we actually connected with them and had conversations, did that uncomfortable conversation that we talked about. We did 33 residential conversations, basically reached out to property owners that were impacted. Some of the stories were horrible, as you can imagine. Some couldn't believe the city was calling and how happy and grateful they were for just the resource and the connection. And that, frankly, was amazing to hear and just make those connections. We also dropped off flyers with the neighbors or residents that we actually did connect with, where we couldn't reach their neighbors left or right of them, and so we physically dropped flyers off with them, and then they distributed flyers with that, all of the resource and contact information on there. So penetration was pretty good, but it was really tricky to get us the information to start with. So with additional assistance from multimedia, the print shop, a couple divisions in ECD, our finance shop, we sent out 1,300 letters via post, basically via the mail on Christmas Eve. It was all hands on deck. We had literally everybody, we delegated upwards. In the back of the photo there, you see the mayor. We had the mayor, all of us, folding flyers and information, stuffing envelopes, and mailing 1,300 flyers out on Christmas Eve for everybody and anybody that was there in the office, which a good portion of the recovery team, of course, is there through the time. Really important. Again, the flyers, basically the info that we had on there was all of the connections that at the time offered resources. So it was incredible that we were able to do it. Left and right of me, kind of in my department and other departments, we could not do it without them. So super grateful. Okay, this slide is really what I wanted to talk about, and that is the work ahead, frankly. We will continue to identify and amplify resources as they exist or they become available. Tracking King County recovery efforts, which has been great with the RFA helping us through this one. Working to make sure our residents know about literally any opportunity that either exists or that might be coming online for assistance. Think free debris removal, all of those different versions of assistance that properties in this circumstance need help with. We're trying to give them that information. So providing updates with our listserv that we established early on. Our social media has been incredible. We refer everybody to our webpage, basically, with all of the information on there, has been an immense help. Okay, so here's the big one out of the economic development person I can't shake here is really restoring confidence in the valley. So we had this event, and it's an important moving thing where lots of business at stake. Clearly the residential was impactful. This is the long road for all of us now, is this event happened. Mentioned it earlier, the North Industrial area. Well, there was no inundation. There was, we had a levee breach outside of our community that impacted our community. So we didn't have waters flowing into businesses, luckily, but what we did have is disruption. We had a lot of uncertainty, and the messaging that existed harmed us. And that's one where it's a steep hill, but we really are going to be working on that. We're personally connecting with these businesses. We're scheduling meetings over the next few days or weeks. The mayor, Chad Beer, and myself are going to be meeting with affected businesses in and around the Desimone Breach area, that levee system. And we're going to be sitting down with them, basically going over what happened, our response to that, our current recovery efforts, and what we could do, how we could work together in the future for any opportunities for improvement. All right. I'm going to close up because I know we're over. I just want to say, I think it's highlighted throughout this presentation tonight. We remain focused on Kent's, really our recovery and long-term resilience. That's our main goal. The city's collaborative response, both with local businesses and our regional partners, I mean, it demonstrates our ongoing commitment to this community, and I could not be more proud to be able to do it alongside the folks that you've heard tonight. And just a special thank you to council for allowing us basically the control and the flexibility to get out in the community and work like we do. There's no better spot. So couldn't be more impressed, and thanks.
Any questions for Kurt? Thank you.
You bet.
All right, we only have like 5 more speakers.
All right.
I'm kidding, we don't. Something you've heard throughout this presentation over and over again is mention of the Regional Fire Authority. They were instrumental in helping us through this event. They helped us stand up the ECC. They helped us staff it with one of their chiefs. Chief Pollock was on every call. We ended a call, I think, at 1 o'clock on a Sunday. We're back on a call at 8 a.m. the next morning, making sure we're aware of what's going on. Kimberly Maymeyer was keeping us up to speed on things, getting the situation reports out on a daily basis. So we could not have done this without them. We are going to be, in the future, we are going to be doing a full overview of what happened, because while we did an excellent job here, we always know there's room to improve. And frankly, this was the first time we've really gone through one of these types of events. Chad's crew deals, they stand up a DOC for winter storms on occasion, but this was really a citywide effort on this one. So we are going to go through an after-action process, assess what we did, and we'll keep you informed as we go through that process. The other thing is, you've heard it over and over, the fact that, or the way that our departments and team members, our employees came together was phenomenal. People who weren't mentioned, I want to note, Law Department helped us with declarations, emergency contracting issues, and employment-related issues. HR Department dealt with, we're calling you in, we are going to declare an emergency and we need you now, and they helped us through that. They are helping us with record keeping for all the hours that employees have put in so that we can go through this recovery process. Communications, one thing we learned, communications is super, super critical in these events. They were working nonstop starting on Sunday, and that was all they were doing there. And then, of course, we have the IT department who has to stand up all the technical stuff so that we can communicate during these events. So every department was involved, and we kept the city going. If you didn't know it was flooding downtown, you would have never known if you went to go get a permit, because your permit would have still been taken care of just like normal. So that's a big deal. That's enclosed. We do have a video that we're going to play. If you don't mind sacrificing another 4 minutes. Kim, can you cue that up for us? And that's what we have. Thank you.
In mid-December, heavy rain and rising rivers put significant pressure on our community. Kent employees stepped up quickly and with incredible dedication. Before the storm event arrived, our staff were out walking the levees, preparing equipment, and getting ready. As conditions worsened, teams across the city moved into 24-hour response mode, working side by side to protect people, homes, and businesses. Public Works, Storm, Streets, Parks, Engineering, Police, and Communications, along with all of our regional partners, worked as one, from sandbagging and pump stations to levee repairs, reopening 167. This was a true team effort. Many of these employees left their desks, their holiday celebrations, and their families to be out in the field when it mattered most. And because of that commitment, Kent made it through one of the most significant events our region has seen in decades. Between record levels of water being released from the Howard Hanson Dam and the ongoing rain, this is something that we haven't experienced in most of our lifetimes. Now that work continues, helping people recover, supporting businesses, families, and making sure our community moves forward. This is what public service looks like.
All right. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Kim. And I just want to say thank you to all departments, everybody who was involved. Thank you for your leadership and taking the time to actually care for our community, the teamwork that went in, your commitment to protecting our residents and our businesses, and ensuring that our city continues on with our everyday stuff that we do normally, permits and everything else. So I appreciate you. Thank you. I mean, this was an event of a decade, I would say, and something we have never seen before. And all of our departments and RFA came together, and we didn't just make an impact here in Kent for our residents and businesses. We helped our state and our neighboring cities, our region, to come out, and thank you so much. And it shows, what kind of employees we have with working for our city of Kent, the commitment they have to our community. So kudos to all of you, and there's not enough words I can say, just thank you, seriously. Thank you to all of you. And I think Councilmember Troutner has some remarks.
Thank you, Madam President. Well said. I echo those sentiments. Thank you to all the departments, everybody that worked together. Thank you to my colleagues and the people that sat up here before me, because a lot of decisions that were made by council were able to prepare our city and do the levee work that we did that would have left us, completely devastated. And instead, we came out of this ahead. Lots of thanks to departments, the executive team, to all of our staff, but I want to say thank you to you, Madam Mayor, because I don't think people realize what you did to bring this city together. You worked with neighboring mayors. I know the city of Auburn, the city of Renton, but people don't realize the amount of time that you spent late nights on the phone. And I know that because we had some conversations. You were out there walking the levees. You spent time away from your family. Everyone worked together to do what we are. We are Kent. And so thank you for your leadership, and thank you to all of our city leaders and staff. So thank you.
All right, Councilmember Shoker.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for that presentation. It was very thorough. As somebody who's newer here on the council, I was really able to follow along, so I appreciate the presentation and all of the work that you all did. I heard back from many local business owners and residents that were being affected at the time, and they were truly very impressed with the work the city of Kent does. So just wanted to make sure that was shared.
All right, thank you. Any other comments? And I think I want to say thank you to our communications team. I think they did a great job keeping our residents, keeping them I guess, knowledgeable on what was going on. And on this video, I mean, everyone is smiling in the video. So probably deserves an award, some type of award, Mayor. If you can create one, I think you should give that to the team. So, and with that, we are adjourned until 7 o'clock for council meeting. Thank you.